TW Wrestling Talk here in a late April edition of the program here on YouTube. Um, we're coming off an interesting episode of Monday Night Raw, I have to say, over in the UK. Um, and I say interesting because there were, a couple, things that happened. You, that just give me hope for the future. In some of these, a couple of these newer talents. Um, I'll just cut to the chase. Ryback and The Shield. And before some people out there, start thinking, oh, look at him, he's on the Ryback bandwagon, or it's tonight was an interesting night for Ryback, in the sense that he completed his heel turn tonight. Um, you know, Last week some people said he completely turned heel. But I think tonight was, complete confirmation that Ryback is now a heel. And he came out now with this skull cap, um, to the ring, and just kind of a he's got a slightly newer feel to him when he comes out. He kind of ditching the "feed me more" chants. It seems. It's tough to say that because he hasn't really wrestled the past few weeks on Raw. Um, but nevertheless, um, he was definitely put in a new position tonight. To get in the ring with Mick Foley, and talk face to face with him. And earlier earlier on in this promo, they were having Ryback kind of throw out some short lines in that. But later in the promo, he gets serious. He's telling McFoley to shut up and hear him out, and and Ryback went on a little bit. He had more of some extended feelings to get out. It seemed of his system, and he called him a lazy bastard, and you know it, Ryback felt for real here. Um, and he's definitely shown some progression on the mic. You got to say, here. I mean, and I'm not saying he was, you know, he was at top notch performance level like The Rock or John Cena or anything. But he held his own here, and it was good enough to me. That's all I'm asking for. Um, you know, he showed, he to get in the ring with Mick Foley. I mean, it's got to be a little intimidating. I mean, Mick Foley is Mick Foley, but I think it was a pretty good execution here by Ryback on the mic. He's definitely shown some improvement, some promise, and at this point, it's tough to complain about Ryback. He's now like a full-fledged heel. Um, And I mean, I was all right with him before he was heel, and now he's shown progress, and um, it's definitely shown me some hope. And WWE is in a bit of a pickle here, I'd have to say at the same time, um, because you got Ryback coming off of several pay-per-view losses. Um, it, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what WWE does here. Um, because John Cena only recently became WWE champion once again, um, and and here you on the other hand you got Ryback, who's he's supposed to be a future star here for years to come, hopefully, and does WWE put off um, you know taking Ryback to that official main event level? Um, it's tough because do they want to cut John Cena's reign short? I mean, I don't really care. I've said I've been on record saying before WrestleMania, um, that I don't care. I didn't care about The Rock against John Cena so much because he already knew what was going to happen. Um, and because to me at this point, John Cena as WWE champion is uninteresting to me. Because as long as he continues to maintain the same character that he's come out and maintained for so long now, I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Um, and but Ryback on the other hand, I was saying before WrestleMania, I'm saying I'm looking forward to the guy that would take the title down the road from John Cena, and I mean who knows? I was speculating that Ryback perhaps over the summer would be doing would be contending for the title. It appears WWE couldn't wait and that they want to have Ryback feud for the title now, and you know they 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 also wanted to turn him heel. I mean, I didn't, after losing to Mark Henry at WrestleMania, I thought maybe they're gonna have a rematch there, and WWE was quick to change their mind here. And I don't fault them for that because if this could be a huge opportunity to for the future of WWE. Um, you wonder if they put off Ryback winning the championship. Um, you just gotta wonder if it's gonna. The timing here is important for WWE because if Ryback, it could be great timing if Ryback wins the championship at Extreme Rules from John Cena. Um, right now it appears that CM Punk, the top heel full time on Raw, or WWE in general, is taking time away. Some speculate he'll be back maybe for SummerSlam. Um, but in these months, this is a good time to then develop somebody new, and I guess that's what WWE sees here. They figured CM Punk is going to take a few months to heal up, um, and I guess they needed another heel. Um, Now I think the problem is, they weren't going to turn Orton heel. They're not going to turn John Cena heel, of course. Um, but they just, I guess they just didn't know, who else to really turn heel, um, other than Ryback. And at the same time, I guess they're filling a vacancy of having a big heel, and Ryback is somewhat of a contrast to CM Punk as a heel. He's a big kind of Brock Lesnar like heel, um, and so that's it's refreshing in a sense,
I agree.
and I mean it's refreshing to see Ryback be the guy who um, kind of does the closing show promo with Mick Foley and not John Cena. Last week, I mean, last week it was the closing promo to me was just annoying when John Cena just goes on and on and talks because it's not refreshing because it's a sense of we've been there, heard that many times over. This is new. This is like Ryback as a heel at the top. It's refreshing, and it'll be interesting to see um, if WWE decides to have Ryback win the championship, or if they decide to have some kind of controversial finish at Extreme Rules. I mean, the thing is, it's going to be at Extreme Rules, so there's going to be some kind of stipulation here. Um, and you wonder what that may be. Maybe it'll just be, a flat out Extreme Rules match between the two. Um, so you got to wonder if what exactly would happen if there's some kind of screw job or I don't know, but I would prefer these guys to have just a good match, no interferences, um, no controversies, just a flat out good match, um, and you know I'm gonna be pulling for a Ryback win. that's the bottom, and everyone knows, why. Like I said, when I knew when it became obvious that John Cena was going to WrestleMania to face The Rock for the WWE Championship, I knew that, all right, well, obviously Cena's winning the championship, and so now it's time to think, since we already know this ahead of time, and since now a lot of, the weeks in between that point and WrestleMania don't matter as much, I was thinking, all right, now I'm going to look to the future. I'm going to look a few months ahead because this is, to me, just a waste of time. It's empty space. Um, so, Ryback was, because they need new guys to win the championship, the WWE championship, that are legitimate. No Alberto Del Rios and, nothing that just is just for, oh, because we need a Mexican star, and I mean, I don't want to get off topic too long, but that theory to me is just complete bogus. I mean, that's like, you know, you know, having a creating a football team, and you have one running back that's way better than the other, and they just say, oh well, even though this running back's so much better, um, we're gonna we need a Mexican kind of guy. We need a Mexican star on our team. So I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to sit out. We got to have this guy in, as the starter because we need a Mexican star. It's just stuff. You know, it's just a little analogy off the top of my head, but it's it's just stuff like that is just kind of stupid. Um, stupid philosophy by WWE. Um, but now, so when they're building a guy like Ryback, to me, it's good. If they would have him become WWE champion, it would definitely be a sign that WWE is looking more to the future, that they're committing themselves more to the future of this project, project, to the future of this product. Now, as I was, as I've been trying to, yeah, they got to commit to the future. That's the bottom line. Um, quite simply, it's a matter of them deciding to move on from this era that, as we know, has been dominated by John Cena, and you know, and I'm not gonna get into this Cena rant, this anti-Cena rant or anything, but people out there, they have a legitimate beef when they, continue to see, when John Cena, has been booked, like Superman. That's, I you can't help but, notice that difference than the way things were perhaps in more glorious WWE days and more prosperous days. Um, and I know people want to throw out the argument that, oh well, having John Cena win constantly and having him have essentially the same character is important for WWE to sell merchandise and blah blah blah. But I I say enough of that, because in days when WWE had more ratings and and stuff like that, they they were putting out, kind of the best content they could. Um, that I don't, I understand they want to sell merchandise, but if they make their effort to put on, great product, the merchandise will sell itself in this day and age. It will. It's there's I know everyone has that whole philosophy, and that, oh well, they got to continue to have John Cena as the face of WWE so they can sell merchandise and stuff. But you can't rely on that forever, because John Cena is not going to be wrestling forever. And you know they got to invest in the future. That's the bottom line. And people want to say that, oh, they got to build in the future, so they got to stop having guys like The Rock, and Brock Lesnar on part time, and I say bogus to that because they're only around for a few main events of pay-per-views of the year, and when they are, they help attract more eyes to the product of WWE so that more people can watch and maybe see these new guys. But the problem is they haven't always used these new guys properly. Um, they haven't, these guys that could use pushes. Wade Barrett, The Miz, they're stuck in the mid card, wavering in the mid card somewhere. Whereas they have guys like Del Rio who aren't gonna, who are gonna be world champion, and it's not gonna get WWE anywhere. But when I see guys, what I'm saying is when I see guys like Ryback perhaps getting pushed, perhaps winning the WWE Championship at Extreme Rules, or if not, maybe in a couple months, maybe after that, shortly, um, as I'm sure Ryback and Cena will have um, multiple matches here, at least more than one in this feud. Um, but when I see them pushing WWE, when I see what they do with the Shield, which they don't seem to get anything wrong with the Shield, um, it gives me hope. And if their logic, was more prominent with others on the roster, it would certainly help. Um, and that's the point I'm getting at here. Um, the Shield, the Shield and Ryback tonight were the stars of the night to me. Now, granted, John Cena came out and gave Ryback an AA, but I what do you expect? Because John Cena was attacked the past, the show went off the air the past couple weeks with John Cena on the ground, um, in pain. So it was predictable that John Cena was going to be standing tall at the end of this show. And of course the whole taunting and smiling, and a lot of guys would, a lot of people prefer less, I don't know, goofing around, taunting. That that's I- you can see where some of this hate comes from John Cena. I don't want to say hate, but I like to call it constructive criticism, at least the way I put it. Um, but you know, but then you see a guy like Ryback do something, and it's not, or the Shield attack, and it's not about you know showing off to the fans and smiling, and that's what I like about the Shield and Ryback, how they're using them. Um, it seems nowadays in the WWE, they seem to know what they're doing with the heels, and not so much the baby faces. Proof? Well, obviously you got John Cena, who's been stale for years now. Um, of course, Randy Orton has been, fairly stale as well. They haven't been, they haven't had as much creative things going on with them. Um, I hate to say it, but Sheamus, I mean, I like the guy, and I wish, perhaps WWE would use him a little more properly. It would help maybe if he was feuding with, you know, it's not even like it's Sheamus's fault, but for whatever reason, it's like he's not totally over as a baby face for some reason, and I don't know, but these baby faces, it just doesn't seem. And of course, don't get me started with Alberto Del Rio. Um, but the point is that these new the heels, they seem to know what they seem to have a better track record of building heels for whatever reason, for building around heels. Um, Ryback, was great tonight to me. Um, Again, he wasn't the best on the mic, or whatever, but he was good tonight. That's and it was interesting because it was refreshing, because it was turning heels, insulting Mick Foley, ripping into him, and it was an interesting scene. And the Shield, again, I like what they did with the Shield tonight, coming down, in a helicopter, which, by the way, that wasn't just, a little, just for show. Um, they had actually competed earlier at another event earlier in the day, um, and so when they were filming that helicopter landing, it wasn't just for show. It was the Shield actually getting transported, um, from a show earlier in the day, to Raw, right there live from a helicopter. I mean, that just deserves a round of applause. At least in my eyes, when as they're descending in the helicopter, and but it's stuff like that they capture on with the Shield, and it works. Then you had the attack backstage, and and the whole dynamic match with Team Hell No, or the Brothers of Destruction, however you want to put it, um, facing the Shield. What more can you say? They had a great match. One of the strongest matches on Raw of the year. Um, um, Perhaps the other strongest match on Raw of the year was the other one involving the Shield. Um, but yeah, this match was definitely one of the better matches we've seen, on Raw, and even throughout the year so far. As there haven't been that many great matches. Um, if you want to go with the ratio of matches that we've had, and good ones. So, but again, I liked what I saw tonight, with Ryback showing promise. The Shield just continuing to, show. I mean, to me, they're over. I mean, I don't. WWE's booking them correctly. They're continuing to win, and every time I just can't. These guys. I all three of them have star potential. That's the bottom line. Together right now, um, as I've said before, uh, they're like they're like the three meats in an Italian sandwich. They just all blend together really nice. The capicola, but they blend together really nice. They got incredible ring chemistry. Every match is a cliffhanger match with them. You had some fans chanting, maybe not some. You've had a lot of fans that were chanting, "This is awesome" in the middle of the match. So, hats off to the Shield, and of course Daniel Bryan, Kane, and the Undertaker. And Daniel Bryan too. You got to give him credit. He hasn't been as prominent, or, as much of a main eventer as he was, but still, when they have him in these matches, with the Shield, and when they put him in a good situation, have a good match, he has a good match and he delivers. And I mean, even you put aside the yes and no chance, and Daniel Bryan, delivers, and so these newer guys, um, they certainly have a place for WWE. Whereas guys like Fandango, who, it appears people care more about his theme song than him, which I don't know why. It's pretty. I don't know. It's like this Dancing with the Stars, you know, rendition of WWE theme music. I don't know, but it's just silly to me. Um, it's a throwaway gimmick. It doesn't scream, you know, intensity like the Shield or like Ryback. As heels that WWE can really rally around, in this company, since apparently they can't turn Orton heel. It seems, at least yet. They can't turn John Cena heel. They can't make, they can't. They gotta have him around to sell the merchandise. As a face still. So, you know, it, but right, right now, Ryback, the Shield, to me, is what Raw is all about right now. Um, of course, barring you know, of course you gotta when Lester's there, include him as well. Oh man, you know, anybody hear that scream at WrestleMania from Lesnar? Uh, I don't know if you know. I wanted to bring that up because there's several videos on YouTube you might want to check out just for fun of this Taylor Swift song, "I Knew You Were Trouble," or I don't listen to that kind of music, but they incorporate Brock Lesnar's screams into the chorus, and yeah, as a wrestling fan, as a Brock Lesnar fan, it's pretty bit of a clever idea and a funny watch if you check it out. Some versions I know are a little more better edited than others, but that's how it is sometimes. Um, and with that in mind, I mean, it's gonna wrap things up for this edition of TW Wrestling Talk. But the bottom line is, I'm looking to the future. Um, I'm looking to, guys who definitely can be the future. Ryback, the Shield, um, who can, in the future they can continue to help this product move, hopefully in the right direction. Um, and as we got a few weeks until Extreme Rules, you got to wonder, is WWE going to um, make Ryback, is Ryback going to become the WWE champion? If he does, it would, to me, it would definitely be a big step in the right direction.
I agree.
And I mean, with that in mind, we'll just have to wait and see what goes down this next week on Monday Night Raw, particularly with the Shield and with Ryback, as these are, and of course Lesnar. um, as these are to me right now, of course CM Punk's taking time off. These are the most interesting aspects of Raw. Um, whereas you got John Cena, who, do his typical shtick that we've seen enough. That some would say we've seen enough. But that's that. So with that in mind, thanks for tuning in to this edition of TW Wrestling Talk, and I encourage subscribing as always, um, and continued viewership, listening to these videos of TW Wrestling Talk. So as always, thanks for tuning in.